Greetings, one and all, and a very merry Mihawk Day to all of you. That's right, it's October 14th, which means it is International Mihawk Day. A day where all over the world, people stop and celebrate the greatest swordsman in the world. Children are out in the streets dressed like Mihawk, getting into sword fights with one another. Red wine is flowing free all over the world. People are participating in Mihawk caroling. Mihawk, with your sword so bright, won't you challenge Shanks tonight? Yeah, that's one of the all-time classic Mihawk Day carols, yes. And for this year, I decided to leave it up to you, the viewers, to choose which video topic about Mihawk I'm going to discuss. It could be any topic, but they had to be one of these four. So we have Mihawk. What if he was Rayleigh's son? We have Mihawk's secret fourth type of hockey, and we have Mihawk's wine collection. But unfortunately, all of those didn't quite make it. Mihawk the Marine Hunter was clearly the winner with 41% of the votes. I was kind of hoping for the wine collection one. That was the one I voted for, personally. Okay, we're still going to do that one. We're still going to do the Mihawk wine collection video, and we're not waiting till next Mihawk Day to do it. I kind of want to do that video. In fact, do I have any wine? I think I do have a glass of wine or a bottle of wine upstairs. Hold on, let me go check. Okay, yeah, I had one bottle of wine. It is a red wine. It's called Thread Count. I haven't opened it yet, but, you know, there you go. Maybe I'll open that up later, and we'll celebrate Mihawk Day properly. Okay, so yes, today we're going to be talking about Dracula Mihawk and his history being the Marine Hunter. This was something that was mentioned by Crocodile right after Wano. I believe it was chapter 1058. So we cut over to Kuraigana Island, Gloomy Island, also known as Nightmare Before Christmas Island, because that's where Oda got the aesthetic for the mountains and everything and what it looks like. Also the place where the human drills live, right? And that's where Zoro trained, and Perona was hanging out with Mihawk for a while. But at this point, Zoro has left to go and rejoin the Straw Hats, and Perona has left to go and try to save Moria at Hachinosu. So Mihawk is once again very lonely. And this is kind of important because this is going to be part of his backstory. Well, anyway, the warlord system got abolished at the Reverie, and so all of the Marines decided to mobilize at once and dedicate a good amount of their firepower to go and bring in the former warlords. This was not the smartest move from them. I mean, I get it. The warlords are now considered pirates again, and their bounties are reactivated, and in a lot of cases, their bounties were elevated. In fact, fun fact, Mihawk is the only warlord who we do not know what his original bounty was before it got frozen. Yeah, his current bounty now is like 3.5 billion, which is actually higher than one of the Yonko, than Buggy's. Actually, two of the Yonko, Buggy's and Luffy's, right? But yeah, we don't know his original bounty. But anyway, Marines decided, like, we're gonna mobilize and we're gonna go after all of those pirates because now they're back to just being regular pirates. And so calling Mihawk a pirate, that's always been a little bit like, is he really? Does he have a Jolly Roger? I don't think you can be a pirate without a Jolly Roger, okay? He doesn't really have a crew. He's just a guy with a sword, all right? And that's all he is, and that's all he really needs, okay? So they send the Marines to his island, and at first it was like Mihawk was kind of excited about that. He was just like, oh yeah, the Marines, it seems like my life's going to get interesting again. But then he immediately cuts to like leaving Kuraigana Island, like he's packing up all of his stuff, which for Mihawk is like one bottle of wine and like 3 books. I always love that scene where he's like, I'm gonna pack, Crocodile, why are you calling me? I have to get going. And the only possessions that he has are his hat, his sword, Yoru, 3 books, and a bottle of wine. Like, that's all he's bringing with. I have to pack, Crocodile. I have to leave. I was like, all right, packing's done, right? And so he's getting ready to skip out and leave. He's like, all right, I fed the human drills. They'll be all right. I'm getting out of here. And then Crocodile is like, hey, maybe you should come and join my group. I'm getting a group of people together. I'm forming a new organization. You and I are a lot alike, Mihawk, right? He says we have a inherent distrust of others, and you used to be referred to as the Marine Hunter back in the day, so you got that reputation, you know? And that's what the Cross Guild is doing right now. They're establishing this system for, like, bounties, but for the Marines. So having a former Marine Hunter, Dracula Mihawk, before he was the greatest swordsman in the world, he was the Marine Hunter, on the crew just makes sense. And I guess because Mihawk was, honestly, I mean, you could say pragmatically that, like, all right, it's probably best to be allied with an Emperor of the Sea. That's probably the place that I might be able to, like, chill out without being constantly attacked by the Marines. But also you could look at it like Mihawk was just kind of sad and lonely, especially after Perona left. And he was like, let's see, I could get on my coffin boat and just float out aimlessly in the sea, or I could have a destination, I could have people to talk to. And so he went to go stay with Crocodile and Buggy. And even in some cases, I mean, he's definitely beat up Buggy before, but there was even a case where Crocodile was really laying into Buggy about, like, the you know, pamphlets they were passing out and everything. Buggy's face was like the biggest thing on the pamphlet. And the ship of the Cross Guild they have built, the big top blaster, has Buggy's figurehead on it. Mihawk was like, I'm not really sure about that. But ultimately, Mihawk did say, I'm actually okay with him taking center stage, because Mihawk himself has very little interest in being an emperor. He kind of just wants to live a peaceful life, and he wants to do that in a way that's not, like, the center of attention. So he's like, I'm okay with, that doesn't mean I'm okay with every single decision that Buggy is going to make. I'm not just going to be his sycophant and listen to whatever he says, but at the same time, I'm okay with him taking the fall. If the Marines show up, we can kind of throw him to the wolves and we can skip out, right? Like, that's kind of the idea. Despite the fact Mihawk does have the highest bounty out of everybody in the Cross Guild. But, you know, whatever. Okay. So, yeah, that's kind of the situation here. Now, we also got some new information about Mihawk in SBS Volume 108. Yeah, so there we go, 108, okay? So the question that Oda got asked was, Crocodile says that Mihawk was once known as the Navy Hunter. Did this have anything to do with Mihawk joining the Seven Warlords of the Sea? That is a fair question, considering a guy that was going around murdering Marine soldiers ends up working not for the Marines, but for the world government, the same kind of umbrella organization, right? That is a little strange on exactly how that went down, right? Now, of course, we understand how the Seven Warlords of the Sea worked. It was like a privateer system where it's like, okay, you guys are really strong pirates. How about instead of being pirates out there, how about we, you know, invite you into the government so we freeze your bounties and, you know, the Marines aren't constantly chasing after you, and in exchange, you kind of do what we tell you to do. Not all the time, but let's say, for example, there's a massive war at Marineford where Whitebeard is going to show up with a bunch of allies. You got to be there for that shit, right? And so that was kind of the arrangement. Some of them, like Jinbei, had the whole situation with Arlong. That's why he joined. Boa didn't really want to join. She was just kind of like, all right, fine, in name only, but I'm not really going to do anything, really. And Mihawk joined because I guess he was just tired of being chased after by the Marines. It was like something he had been doing for a long time, and then he just got kind of sick of it, and he's like, I'd rather just have a place where I can just hang my hat and my sword and just not worry about constantly being attacked by Marine gunfire. Not because it was a threat to him, but probably just because it was annoying. You know, Mihawk likes to take his naps, and it's hard to take a nap when a Marine vessel is constantly, there's Dracula Mihawk, the Marine Hunter! Fire all the salvos! Boom, boom, boom! And Mihawk is like, son of a, I'm just trying to take a nap, man! You know what I mean? So that's why he joined, right? Okay, so that was the question, and this is Oda's response. Now, pay attention, because it's very easy to, like, lump together these things as, like, the same thing, but I think there's separate instances here that Oda discusses, okay? Mihawk met with a terrible betrayal in the past, and his background gives him reasons to hate the Navy. Okay, pause. Are those two things connected, or are they separate? He was met with a terrible betrayal at some point in his past, and his background gives him reason to hate the Navy. So you could say he suffered a horrible betrayal that had nothing to do with the Navy, and then there was an unrelated incident that resulted in him forming a grudge against the Navy. And so those are two separate things. Or you could say it was the same thing. The person that betrayed him might have been a member of the Marines, might have been like a vice admiral or something. And I have some ideas, and we'll get to that in a moment. But Oda goes on. So in the sense that he is alone because he doesn't trust others, he fits right with Crocodile. There's a part of him that simply is tired of life. And you can kind of feel that with both Crocodile and Mihawk a little bit, but Mihawk, you can kind of feel it. Like, the dude lives in a Dracula castle on an island by himself. He doesn't really, he's just sitting around and gets drunk all the time, right? On his off days, when he's not going around challenging swordsmen to fights. And even in that regard, you get the impression that Mihawk kind of doesn't get any enjoyment out of that anymore. When he's fighting against other swordsmen and stuff, he's just kind of bored with it. Ever since Shanks lost the arm, it hasn't really been that exciting, you know what I mean? He probably joined the Warlords because at least that way he wouldn't need to worry about the Navy chasing him around. But now that he's lost that status, he came up with the idea of hiding in Buggy's shadow instead. Okay, so that gives you some introspection into Mihawk's character. And remember, we don't really know anything about his past concretely yet. Oda has yet to really touch upon that in any meaningful way. But we're beginning to get some hints and some clues. I think Oda's beginning to prime us for a Mihawk flashback, probably not like in the immediate future, although who knows where this God Valley flashback is going, since we've already went from Loki to Harald to Rocks, and then Shocky. After God Valley, the flashback could just keep going and we follow Mihawk around for a while. You know what I mean? Like, why not, right? We follow Baby Shanks for a while and then we follow Mihawk. It's just, there we go, and we understand where he was coming from, right? So we're getting a little bit of like breadcrumbs of Mihawk's past, and so when we finally get that flashback, it kind of shows that, like, yes, Oda has a thing written out for this. He understands what Mihawk's past is. He's not going to skip over it. We are going to get that at some point. Okay, so Mihawk is okay with being in Buggy's shadow. He's all right with that. He doesn't want to be a warlord. He doesn't want to rule the world. He doesn't want to find the One Piece. He is not that kind of character. And I also, for that reason, don't consider him a pirate, really. I mean, in the eyes of the world government, anybody that doesn't follow the world government, especially if he's going out there defeating really strong Marines and stuff, maybe just because he wanted to see the strongest swordsman in the world. So a lot of swordsmen are in the Marines, and so he's like challenging Marines and cutting them down, and they're like, okay, you're a pirate, and Mihawk's like, all right, you can call me whatever you want, I really don't care, but if you chase after me, I'm gonna sink your ships. And then that happened, and then eventually the warlord system was established, and they invited him in, and he was like, okay, I guess I'll do this for a while, right? But you really get that vibe, okay? And once again, going back to when he returned to Kuragana Island after Marineford and he met Zoro and Perona there, there's maybe a little bit of like he's feeling the joys of life again, kind of like he's feeling a little bit more energized because he's actually interacting with people again, and he's training Zoro, and Perona's hanging out with him, and he actually tills the fields with the human drills, and Perona helps him out. Perona like lives with Mihawk for like 2 years before she leaves and makes him like food and stuff. Now Mihawk cooks as well, and they kind of bicker a little bit like a married couple, and then eventually she learns about Moria, and she's like, okay, I'm out of here. And Mihawk's like, hey, be careful. And she's like, yeah, whatever, you jerk, I'm out of here, right? And Mihawk puts up a facade of just like, I don't really care about this. You can leave, you could stay, I don't mind. I think deep down after Perona and Zoro left and the whole castle was quiet again, I feel like there was a moment there where Mihawk was like sipping some wine and he was like, shit. He's just like, crap. All alone with just my thoughts again. Every now and then he might go out into the human drills and just be like, hey, you guys want to hang out? And the human drills are like, just like, Mihawk is sitting there playing poker with the human drills, and they're not very good, but it's like the only company he's got, right? And so maybe that's why when Crocodile called him up, he was actually like, damn, thank you for calling. Thank you for actually calling me and giving me, okay, I'll join you guys. I'll join the Cross Guild, whatever, sure. Okay. So that's where he's at right now. Okay. Great betrayal, hate or a grudge against the Navy, distrust of others, and very lonely and sad. All right, these are the qualities that we know about Mihawk that come directly from, the mangaka of One Piece, Oda himself. Okay. I'm going to give you a scenario where the great betrayal of the that he suffered and the Navy's hatred that he has are the same thing, are related, and then they are separate, okay? So let's tackle it this way. Let's say Mihawk, when he was a kid, was growing up on a certain island. We actually don't know where he's from. I think in the Vivre cards it was actually kind of blotted out or censored, like where Mihawk was originally from. So it's kind of up in the air on where he grew up, okay? So we'll find out about that at some point. Now, I don't want to have the same kind of backstory, I think, as a lot of other characters have involving the Navy. Like, you know, the Navy was supposed to protect us, but they were evil instead and they attacked us or something like that, right? How about we do something a little bit different from this, but still could lead to suffering a great betrayal and Mihawk not trusting the Marines after this, okay? So let's say he's growing up on this island and there was a Marine base on the island. All right. And he's growing up there and he has a family and he's training in the art of the sword. Maybe it was even like some people at the, let's say the person that originally instructed Mihawk in swordsmanship, because we see him drawn as a kid and he's even back then training in the art of the sword. Okay. So maybe not his principal, his main master that taught him everything, but the first person that set him on the path of the sword was, let's say, a Marine that was stationed on the island and they were just training Mihawk, you know, in their spare time. Maybe Mihawk, even for a brief moment, wanted to be a Marine when he grew up. Possible, okay. At the end of the day, I think it's the same thing with Zoro. Zoro just wanted to challenge progressively stronger opponents to make his mark in the world, right? And then also you got to question who was the greatest swordsman in the world previous to Mihawk. This is where we get to maybe Rayleigh. Well, anyway, he's training on this island, and let's say there's, like, I don't know, a Marine lieutenant or a Marine captain or somebody that seems like a really nice dude and is teaching him all about the sword. Okay, great, fantastic. Now, one day, pirates attack, okay? And this entire time, Mihawk is training in the art of the sword, and the Marine that's instructing him is all about justice, and, like, this is the reason you pick up the sword, Mihawk. You pick up the sword to defend the innocent and to do this and that and the other thing. Like, all these like the ideals of, like, knighthood, you know what I mean? Like, chivalry and all that kind of shit, right? Let's say that was the way that he was instructed, and Mihawk actually bought into that, like defending the downtrodden and all that stuff, be courageous and virtuous and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, pirates attack his island, and Mihawk is like maybe a little kid at the time. He picks up his sword, and he's like, I'm going to go help the Marines defend my island, because that's what being a swordsman is all about, and that's what Marines are all about, justice, right? He goes to go and try to help them. Those Marines left. They abandoned him. They weren't evil. They didn't, like, join the pirates, or it wasn't like the Marines were, like, burning the town down or anything like that. No, they fucking left. They were cowards. They fled. And there could even be a scene where Mihawk maybe runs into his master, you know, the Marine captain that taught him the way of the sword. Like, you will always defend the way of the downtrodden and all that. And Mihawk's like, what are you doing? Why are you leaving? He's like, these pirates are strong. I don't want to die. I'm out of here. And they all leave. And Mihawk's like, what? What? And then meanwhile, the rest of the town just gets sacked, okay? And so maybe even at that young age, Mihawk, being, you know, a swordsman, was able to fight off against a couple of the pirates and stuff like that, but he wasn't able to defeat them all. And, you know, at that point, maybe Mihawk realized, maybe he fought against the pirate captain, and he was, like, you know, giving his best, and maybe he was able to, like, remember when Ace fought against Blue Jam at, you know, the Gray Terminal? Like, he was actually able to, like him and Dadan were kind of able to beat him, you know what I mean, even when Ace was a kid. So maybe Mihawk, same deal, like, and he was fighting against this pirate captain, and at the end of it, he gets knocked out. Maybe he defeats the pirate captain, but he knocks out, and he just wakes up in just a burned out hellscape. Mihawk just gets up, and like, the Marines skipped out. They abandoned the place they were supposed to protect, and all the citizens are dead at this point, and all the places, all the houses are burned down, and the pirates are taken care of. Maybe you know, Mihawk defeats the pirate captain. They all flee, so they get out of there, and now Mihawk's just all alone. And he's all alone, and he's on this island, and he doesn't even know what the hell honor and justice and chivalry and being a swordsman even means anymore, right? So that could be a perfect example of suffering a great betrayal, as well as having a hatred or grudge against the Marines for abandoning their post when they needed them most, you know, kind of shit, right? That is a very easy way to take both of those angles with that. I was also throwing out the idea of, since we are looking at famous Marines, like maybe there was a particular Marine that we know now in the story. That's a very prominent Marine that betrayed Mihawk, and that was the reason why, that happened. And I'm looking at all the prominent Marines right now, especially like the high-ranking ones like the Admirals. Well, we know a lot about Aokiji's backstory with Garp, and we know a lot about Kizaru's backstory with Vegapunk. We've still yet to see Akainu's backstory. So I was thinking maybe you can incorporate Akainu's backstory with Mihawk's backstory, and while it's not impossible, remember Mihawk and Akainu were both at Marineford together, and Oda didn't really draw anything or write any dialogue that indicated that, like, Mihawk and Akainu knew each other, or Mihawk hated Akainu, or Akainu was like, oh, yes, Mihawk, we haven't seen each other in quite some time, Nothing like that. So I doubt it, but it's not impossible. We still don't know anything about Akainu's backstory, other than the fact that Hibari is his daughter, which is clearly a thing, right? So, I don't know. Maybe it's a Marine that we know about, or it's just maybe generic Marines on some island that abandoned their post, and Mihawk was left like, what? And that was it. And I think that would give his backstory, that would make sense there. So I'm also going to bring this up really quick. I don't think this is what Oda was referring to, but he did say a great betrayal. And you can't help but bring up Shanks, because, like, Shanks and him were, like, rivals, and they fought constantly. And then Shanks lost an arm. And then is that the betrayal? Mihawk rolls up to go challenge Shanks. It's like, all right, Shanks, maybe back then he had way more energy about him. It's like, Shanks, been a while since our last duel. Oh, it was a close one last time. Let's duel again. And then Shanks turns around and he's missing an arm. And then Mihawk's like, like, it just shatters right there. It's just like, no! Why would you do that? Why would you lose your arm? And then Shanks is like, I made a bet on the new era. No! And Mihawk was crushed on that day, and he left, and he never challenged Shanks again. That could be the betrayal right there, but I doubt it. I doubt that's the level of betrayal. I feel like it happened earlier than that in his life, in, like, his formative years, but maybe it was. I don't know. Also, in that same chapter, when, was it chapter 1058, when Crocodile contacts Mihawk, we also get a scene with Brand New, the intelligence operative in the Marines, going over the cross-skilled bounties. And so when he's talking about Mihawk's bounty, he specifically says, and this isn't something added in the anime, it was something specifically said in the manga, that his swordsmanship skills outclass even that of red-haired Shanks. Now, remember, this is not Oda saying this. This is not the narrator saying this. This is Brand New. This is a guy in the Marines, an intelligence operative, saying that, like, oh yeah, he's the greatest swordsman in the world. His swordsmanship skills surpass even that of red-haired Shanks. Now, that doesn't mean that Mihawk is 100% confirmed stronger than Shanks, beats Shanks any day of the week, doesn't matter how or what the circumstances are. It just means that whatever determined Mihawk to be the greatest swordsman in the world, you can only have one greatest swordsman in the world. You can't have two at the same time. You can only have one. And he's the one that has that title. So Brand New, it would make sense for him to say that, like, yeah, I mean, he's the strongest swordsman in the world. He must be even stronger than Flower's sword, Vista, or I don't know, Big Mom has a sword, I guess, or even Shanks. Shanks uses a sword, doesn't matter. Stronger than the God's Knights, I guess, or all the Marine swordsmen at the very least, right? Okay. So that's kind of the whole situation we have with that. I don't think the Shanks betrayal, missing an arm thing is what it was, but who knows? So if the great betrayal he suffered maybe wasn't related to the Marines, it could be related to his family. It could be related to a friend of his. Maybe we could have, and honestly, I could even see Oda doing a parallel between Kuina and Zoro with Mihawk and somebody else. Remember Saga from the 5th One Piece movie? Saga basically replaces Kuina in Zoro's flashback in that movie. Kuina's not even mentioned, even though it's a movie about Zoro and his past, right? Which sucks. That's basically what happens. It's just like, what if this guy was Zoro's rival growing up instead of Kuina? So what if Mihawk had a rival? What if Saga was Mihawk's actual rival or something, and they both promised to be great swordsmen one day, and unlike what happened with Kuina, where she fell down some stairs after being defeated by a rival swordmaster from another dojo, maybe Saga, I'm just going to use Saga as a placeholder here for Mihawk's rival, decided, like, just to give up the sword one day. he was just like, nah, Mihawk, sorry, I'm not doing this anymore. He didn't die, but he's just like, I'm giving up. I'm going to go be a baker instead or something. Maybe not something that ridiculous, but he's like, I'm not going to be a sword master. I'm going to go be a dentist. And Mihawk's like, no. And then Mihawk meets Shanks later in life. And he's like, my friend betrayed me. I thought he was going to be my rival, but he's not going to be anymore. And so he wanders aimlessly for a bit. He was present at Goldie Roger's execution. That is the earliest we've seen Mihawk, when he was 19 years old. And he had Yoru at that time, and he was visiting Logtown, and he sees the execution of Goldie Roger. We also see him in the live action as well. But yeah, that is the only time. That's the earliest we see him. We don't see him. I guess there's also the artwork that Oda drew of him in like the SBS, but we don't know the context of like where he was living at the time there, right? But anyway, so he wanders around for a bit aimlessly, kind of like, am I ever going to find another rival that's worthy of my skill? And then he meets Shanks. And then it's like, okay, now it's all right. There's people in the world that meet my level. And then Shanks loses an arm. So maybe they both count as great betrayals for him. Who knows? I'm not really sure there. Then having a hatred or grudge against the Marines. Now remember, the Marines did go after him, but that was after he started becoming the Marine Hunter. Okay, so the Marine Hunter epithet happened first. Now, it could have just been a misunderstanding at first, right? Let's say Mihawk is traveling the world looking for strong swordsmen to fight. He finds a great Marine, like a vice admiral, maybe even an admiral at the time. And he's like, I am challenging you to a duel. And he fights him, and he wins, and he kills him. But then the other Marines don't know that it was a duel, and the other Marine agreed to the duel, and like, oh, I'll agree to fight you as a swordsman, you know, the winner survives, the loser dies. And then so the other Marines saw him do it, like, he murdered Vice Admiral Dio! No, not Vice Admiral Dio! And so then it was just like, you are now a pirate, you're the Marine Hunter, get out of here! You know what I mean? Like, that was the sort of idea. And at that point, maybe Mihawk was just like, oh, that's okay. I guess I'll fight the Marines now. Maybe not exactly that. Doesn't really make sense because it says hatred of the Marines, a grudge against the Marines. Okay, so that means something happened with the Marines and Mihawk that royally pissed him off. Something happened there that basically might have set him on the road of, okay, the Marines have pissed me off. I am now going to go and fight and, you know, slice down all the Marines that I possibly can. And that's how he got the title, okay? So what could have happened there, right? Could, we don't know. We know Rayleigh and Shockey are not Mihawk's parents, but Mihawk's parents were Marines. So we tie together them both at the same time. I said it could have been a familial betrayal. Well, it could have been both. It could have been a betrayal of family and a betrayal from the Marines at the same time, right? Or maybe a big brother. Maybe Mihawk had like an Itachi figure in his life, right? And so his Itachi betrayed him, maybe slaughtered his whole family one day, as Itachis tend to do. And so then he was like, I'm going to hunt all the Marines down, you know, because they Marines allowed this to happen or something. I don't know. Or my brother was a Marine. There's a couple of angles we could do this that are similar to other manga, but we haven't really quite seen in One Piece quite yet, you know? So we could do that definitely, right? But yeah, great betrayal, hatred of the Marines, not necessarily the same thing, but very likely could be, right? And then the distrust of others that Crocodile mentions, I feel like that stems from that. I feel like it's at least two different groups in his life he was betrayed. Could have been a betrayal from authority, betrayal from family, betrayal from friends and his like social circles and stuff like that, betrayal of a lover, betrayal. It could be any number of betrayals he suffered, but I think he suffered at least two different betrayals from different groups that made him be this like, okay, screw it. I'm going solo from now on. I'm going solo. I just have an inherent distrust of other people. I'm just going to be my own guy, traveling the seas, cutting up Marines, and trying to find the greatest swordsman in the world, cut him down. Maybe, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Are you guys waiting a minute? I mean to actually wait a minute. Okay, I'm going to take a drink. It's good iced tea. We're waiting a minute. just like check your phones really quick. I don't know. How you guys going on? You can kind of probably step out for a smoke really quick if you know, do it, you know, have a drink. I don't know. What's going on? Everything all right? Yeah. It's October. What goes on in October? Everybody ready for Halloween? Going on any costume parties or anything? If you're still in college, you know, you got midterms coming up, so good luck on all those. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to Vegas this weekend. That should be a lot of fun. I got to film a lot of videos in advance for that. Yeah, so I still got to do that. Devil fruit discussions. Okay, I think it's been about a minute. Okay, wait a minute. All right. What if the greatest betrayal he suffered was from the former greatest swordsman in the world? Okay. He's the greatest swordsman in the world, which means he had to defeat and probably kill the former greatest swordsman in the world. Let's say it's not Rayleigh. Who else would it have been? Now, this creates another issue because we have to establish a whole new character, maybe. I mean, Rox, I would assume, is the greatest swordsman in the world. But, oh, wait a minute. Holy shit. Could it have been Rox? Okay. Mihawk is 43 years old, which means by the time God Valley rolled around, he was only 5, okay? Is it possible Mihawk, at the age of 5, was like, I want to be the greatest swordsman in the world, and is like, okay, well, you're going to have to beat Roxy Zebek someday. And he's like, okay. And maybe, just like Loki, like, 5-year-old Mihawk was reading the newspaper like, wow, Rox is so cool. He's the strongest swordsman in the world. I can't wait to grow up and challenge him. And then Rox dies at God Valley. And then Mihawk is like, no, my dream has been crushed, you know? Now, you know, I mean, hey, Loki was a little kid when he admired Rox, and then Rox died, and Loki was upset over that. You could have the same kind of deal with Mihawk. If it wasn't Rox, and if it wasn't Rayleigh, these might have been really strong swordsmen in their own right, but they weren't the absolute strongest of their era. Or perhaps Mihawk didn't have that dream to be the greatest swordsman until he was a little bit older. Okay, maybe he was like around 10 when he decided to be the greatest swordsman in the world or something like that. And at that point, it would have been a different person, right? And so what if it was like, oh yeah, this individual was applauded as being the greatest swordsman in the world, right? And he lives on top of a mountain, and he's like really sequestered, and nobody knows, you know, but he's the strongest. He's the absolute strongest, right? And so Mihawk trains his ass off all throughout his early years. And then he finally goes out to sea, you know, and he goes out to try to find this greatest swordsman in the world. And you know how, like, Zoro knew it was Mihawk, and then he runs into Mihawk pretty early on in his journey at Baratier, and he finds out pretty quickly just how scary the strongest swordsman in the world really is, right? What if Mihawk, same deal, he went out to sea to find the strongest swordsman, he climbs a giant mountain or some shit, he climbs Mount Silver, and he reaches, he cuts down a bunch of monsters that were living in the mountain, he finally reaches the summit where the greatest swordsman in the world was supposedly at. Two things could be funny here. Number one, he just finds a skeleton. He just finds a skeleton. The greatest swordsman in the world on top of this mountain. No one has seen him in decades, but he's the strongest. Mihawk's like, all right, I'm going to go do this. Goes up, slices through a bunch of Tyrannotars and shit, finally reaches the summit, and it's just a skeleton. It's just a skeleton with Yoru next to the skeleton. And it's like, son of a bitch! I got here too late! So Mihawk just picks up Yoru and walks away, and he's like, damn it! So then maybe he went around the world and defeated all these other swordsmen, and so everybody kept calling Mihawk the greatest swordsman in the world because, you know, he's beating everybody else. And then even when he starts dueling against Shanks, I'm sure Shanks won a few of those duels. I'm sure Mihawk won a few of those duels. It's just the last epic duel they had, the one Whitebeard was there to witness, and he was like, holy shit, this was the greatest battle ever. Whitebeard's there eating popcorn like, this is the greatest duel I've ever seen in my life, right? That duel, Mihawk probably won, and that cemented his title firmly as greatest swordsman in the world. And then Shanks could have come back and maybe beat him, but then he lost an arm at that point. And it's maybe not necessarily Shanks cannot beat Mihawk. Mihawk refuses to duel him because he's missing an arm now, right? This is actually a really funny scene in the live action when Mihawk arrives to show Shanks Luffy's wanted poster, and he's like, I'm not going to challenge you now that you're half the man you used to be. And Shanks is like, I could still take you. And that's with one hand tied behind my back. And then everybody laughs. Like, that was funny. That was a nice little addition to the live action. That was really funny. Anyway, so, you know, that's kind of how he got cemented as status. But deep down, Mihawk knows, like, I'm not the greatest swordsman in the world. I went to go fight the greatest swordsman in the world, and he was dead the whole time. I missed out. I never had the opportunity to actually test my mettle. Now, another option, he climbs the mountain to find this guy, and it's just a dude. It's like a character like King from One Punch Man that, like, is just, or Buggy, I guess, from One Piece, just full of so much, like, not even bluster, but, like, accidentally falls into the position, right? There's just this old man, this old hermit living at top of the mountain. He's like, who's that now? What's that? And then Mihawk shows up. He's like, I am a great swordsman here to challenge you. I hear you are the greatest swordsman in the world. Huh? Greatest swordsman in the world? Oh, that whole shit. Yeah, people keep saying that, and they kept challenging me. I was really scared, so I ran to the top of this mountain so no one could bother me. Please don't kill me. I'm 95 years old, and I have hip dysplasia. Please. And then Mihawk is like, You're bullshitting me, right? You're seriously kidding. You're actually an old man that's really cool and badass, right? What? No! All I have is a pot. A pot full of porridge. That's all I got to my name. Do you want some porridge? I guess. And then Mihawk sits down and has a meal with him and then leaves and then realizes that all of the hype has been just completely overblown. Mihawk, don't feel too bad. There's still a lot of strong swordsmen you could fight. Your fight with Vista was fun at Marineford. You looked like you enjoyed that a little bit. And Fujitora, you haven't even fought against Fujitora yet. I would pay to see a Mihawk versus Fujitora fight. Mihawk would probably win, but, you know, I would be seen as like, Mihawk's like, nah, I'd win. I'd be like, yeah, probably, but it would be nice to see. There's other really strong swordsmen in the world, right? The Gods Knights and all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, there you go. But, yeah, that could be the Great Betrayal. That could be something related to the hatred of the Marines. So let me know down below on exactly how Mihawk's past went and who betrayed him and the situation with the Marines and all them. How many Marines did Mihawk cut down in his career, right? And then the whole thing with living on the island by himself. We're going to make another Mihawk video, I feel like, fairly soon because we gotta talk about his prized wine collection. I'm going to have to scour wine YouTube, I guess. All the wine experts on YouTube to see what's going on there, I guess, I suppose. All right, anyway, that's the video. Happy Mihawk Day to everybody. Hopefully you set up your Yoru at the end of the day and put the lights around it, and then you put a bunch of gifts under your Yoru. You know, that's how we celebrate. Because Mihawk, every Mihawk Day Eve, he flies around in his sled, in his coffin sled, and he delivers presents to everybody in the world. That's how it works. Okay, I'm not totally just making up this holiday as I go. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching, signing out. Later.